How to play Crossroads Wargame. Warrior Stat Cards. Every warrior in the Crossroads Wargame has an associated warrior stat card, presenting their affiliations, abilities, and weapon rules to be referenced during a match. There are 8 points of interest on each of these cards, which we'll cover in this video. Point of interest number 1, the warrior's name. This section is used to identify which warrior this stat card represents. In this example, we have the Judge. Point of interest number 2, faction affiliation. The faction designates the warrior's broader loyalties in the Crossroads universe. New Eden is the Judgment Squad's ultimate authority structure, while the Principality is associated with the Enoki Pantheon. The faction will be important when selecting a team ability card, as warriors can only benefit from a matching team ability faction or a neutral one. Point of interest number 3, stat values. These numbers represent a warrior's capabilities during a match. L stands for level. This stat provides precedence in the event that 2 abilities would conflict. A higher level ability takes precedence over a lower one. A warrior's level ranges between 1 and 9. The Judge is level 5. V is for vitality. This stat represents a warrior's life force. If a warrior receives damage from an attack, their vitality may be affected. For every 2 damage a warrior receives during a turn, their vitality is reduced by 1. Vitality does not restore unless specifically stated, whether through an ability, technique, or some other means. If a warrior's vitality is reduced to 0, they are taken out of action and are removed from the battlefield. M is might. This stat represents a warrior's innate strength and physical lethality. The might stat is applied to a roll when attempting to attack an opponent's warrior, being compared to the enemy warrior's guard stat. The G represents guard. This stat governs a warrior's armor or natural resilience to attacks. The guard stat attempts to prevent potential damage to the vitality of a warrior. P is for prowess. This stat represents a warrior's dexterous nature and ability to use ranged weapons. It is compared against an opposing warrior's agility stat when using a ranged attack. A is for agility. In addition to offering the chance to dodge an incoming ranged attack, this stat governs a warrior's movement speed. Point of interest number 4, the ability section. In this example, the Judge has the ability Combat Priority, which allows him to perform a free melee attack action during his activation. There are many different abilities across the different warrior stat cards of the Crossroads Wargame. Some are character abilities, others are aura abilities, which will designate a range and affect other warriors in its general vicinity. Some abilities will require an action to be expended in order to perform, while others will note if it qualifies as a free action. Point of interest number 5, the melee weapon. In this example, the Judge is equipped with the Anointed Gavel. The rest of this section details the weapon's other attributes. The weapon's might stat adds to the Judge's innate might stat. With M1+, it turns his natural M2 into a 3. The range is melee, deferring to the default 1 inch. The damage stat relays the roll that you will need when applying damage. The level of the weapon acts the same way as the character level, setting precedence in the event that abilities would conflict. There are 3 other abilities that affect how the melee weapon works. The first is critical. A critical is achieved when a player rolls an unmodified 6 for the first roll of the combat. This would trigger the Deadly Hits ability, adding an additional 1d3 damage on top of the native 1d6, for a total of 2 through 9 damage as opposed to 1 through 6. The technique is always active. In this example, the technique is Charge. For 1 action, the Judge can move up to his agility 3 inches and then perform a free melee attack. The debuff section imposes penalties on the warrior wielding the weapon. Lucky for the Judge, this section states NA, meaning there is no debuff for him to worry about. Point of interest number 6. Ranged weapon. This block details the rules for the warrior's ranged weapon. They follow the same rules as melee weapons, with a few caveats. Ranged weapons have their own might stat that is calculated separately from the warrior's. Note that this means the bullseye critical ability of the judge's lag pistol would add M1+ to the weapon's might stat, and not the judge's might stat. The judge's lag pistol has a range up to 9 inches. As with the melee weapon, ranged weapons cannot be used to attack another warrior outside of their stated range. Range is calculated in a straight line from the warrior's base to the target warrior's base. A ranged weapon cannot be used if the target is not visible to the wielder, as in the case of intervening terrain or other warriors. The critical ability of a ranged weapon only takes effect if a critical success is rolled for the warrior's prowess roll. A critical success on the preceding might roll does not trigger the ability, though does still count as a critical success for the purposes of attempting to deal damage. If the attack is successful, the damage is then rolled and applied. Point of interest 7. Base size. This determines the legal base size for the warrior. All of the miniatures for the Crossroads Wargame are provided with their legal base size. Point of interest 8. Point cost. Each warrior has a listed point cost that is calculated based on their stats and loadouts. A standard force in a game of Crossroads comprises 200 points. This is to maintain balance between forces that may have different numbers of warriors with different capabilities. This concludes the required understanding of the warrior stat cards. Armed with this knowledge, you can make the most out of your warriors on the battlefields of the Crossroads Wargame. May your victory be assured.